Well, hello. Apparently, we are live on LinkedIn and on Crowdcast. This is a first for me, being live on LinkedIn, my inaugural. So, welcome to Meet the Expert with me, Mr. RecruiterFit. Uh, by the way, that was a company name that was born out of an industry need, getting recruiters fitter in their professional recruitment practices, and of course, bring a little ray of sunshine with my yellow top. Um, I also hope, by the way, that I do a slightly better job than President Biden did at one of his most recent conferences or press conferences. I wonder what relationships he's damaged. I do actually have notes, but I haven't got a press secretary to ask in case I mess up. Although I do have Charlotte in the background keeping me informed of what's going on LinkedIn Live, because I'm actually doing this via Crowdcast. And I also hope that you appreciate that I've dusted off my PowerPoint skills for you. Haven't used PowerPoint in years. So I've given you a few slides so you're not just looking at this all the time. And do please get involved. When us trainers and people on these, when we do these types of things and we go solo like this, you can feel very alone. So fill up the chat box with comments. I don't mind. Any comment you like. You can tell me about what you're having for dinner, but questions, emojis, anything you like, just so it doesn't feel as if I'm talking to myself. So Angela, bless her, she's let me loose. She's let me loose to discuss relationships, relationships and objection handling. Thank you, Donovan. Insert comment here. And I suppose Angela's let me discuss relationships as well as objection handling. And you might think that they're quite unlikely bedfellows. Well, Angela and I, despite the rumours, are still talking to one another after knowing one another for the best part of 26 years. And we have survived a near-death experience together. And of course, we've always agreed. And I am, of course, flattered to be called an expert. But unfortunately, this word expert, it does remind me of a horrible episode in my life when I was a financial advisor. We had a massive team of advisors, about 250 people when I was working for NatWest. And my job was to stand up on stage and introduce our brand new regional manager. So I did an address to the room. I don't mind telling you his name. His name was Colin Garner. And if you can visualize a 5'2" sooty puppet, then that was him. By the way, that isn't how I introduced him. That wouldn't have been good. So I said a few words about his background. I introduced him as an expert within his field, and there was, a polite round of applause. And Colin made his way up onto the stage. When the applause died down, he looked to me and pointed, and he said, "What's your name?" So of course I looked up at the stage a bit nervously, and I just said, "Alan Clark." And then he said these words, and these have haunted me ever since: "Don't ever introduce me as an expert." And there was just this hush went over the group of people assembled there. And he said, "Because an X is a has-been and a spurt is a drip of water under pressure, and I am neither." And I thought, well, that certainly put me in my place. And the thing is, the people that were there, they didn't know if he was being serious or not. So I suppose probably not the best start in the relationship for him either. So my first point is, don't judge me as an expert, but don't judge me as a has-been either, for that matter. But rather than somebody whose life experiences, although they might have not culminated in university degrees, what they have culminated in is lots of wonderful stories and analogies that I like to share with you and may even resonate with you. And of course, you've got to remember that my wife and I have survived a marriage for the last 37 years. Yes, it's 37 years today. 37 years ago we got married. And I have had a look at what 37 years is in terms of a gift. And lucky for me, it's Nando's. Excellent. So I know how to treat a woman. That said, in the 37 years, we do have a laugh, but we don't always get our thoughts aligned. You see, I got her a lovely romantic card yesterday, added in a few lovely words. And then this morning, I got this. Now, on the face of it, it's nice, isn't it? Apparently, that's meant to be me. So another point I wanted to make here was that when you're starting out in a potential relationship, do your research, get your introductions right, and don't do or say anything that might come back and bite you on the arse. This, by the way, is coming from a man who proposed to a woman. Yes, that woman on the screen right now, within 4 hours of seeing her, not meeting her, within 4 hours of seeing her. That's a whole new story. So let's get back to the point. Um, what's that? Angela Calypso, not sure what Angela's commenting. I thought she was going to be away. I thought she was going to leave me alone. So many trainers. What do we like? Trainers and coaches. We like to get clarity right from the outset, and when they run sessions, particularly in terms of definitions and meaning. So I want to kick off with the word relationship. Let's get the pronunciation right, ladies and gentlemen. It's relay, shun, and ship. So relay. Sometimes relationships are a bit like running a relay, passing the baton of responsibility, sharing the ownership, running around like headless chickens, occasionally even dropping the baton at times and not finishing the race. Now, when it comes to the word shun, a successful relationship does not normally include this. Don't shun, don't ignore the other person or their feelings. That said, if you've tried to build a relationship and the other party is not willing, and it turns out that they're not worth your additional time and effort, then move on, take the baton with you. Don't let them drag you down. And then, of course, the last word represented by the ship. Be on board with the other person. Be on board with the people that you're building this relationship with. Ensure that the course that you have plotted is agreed and that you're all headed in the same direction. But also make sure that this ship, that this vessel, this mode of transport is well equipped to help you to navigate the calm, but also sometimes choppy conditions that you'll have during a relationship. There you have it. You see, you heard it here first. But I guess if you want a proper definition, it's this one. It's the way two or more people are connected, or the way they behave towards each other. In other words, how they relate. Now, if you dive a little bit deeper into the proper definition of relationship, it says there are four main types: family relationships, you've got friendships, you've got acquaintances, and I'm assuming this one is more work related, and then you've got romantic relationships. I suspect there may well be some overlap in some of these ones, particularly with offers romances, working with the family and friends and that sort of thing. Now, in terms of healthy relationships, they've got to have four ingredients. They've got to have honesty, they've got to have trust, they've got to have respect, and they've got to have open communication. Now, it's this open communication that takes effort, it takes compromise from all parties. Now, the other things that trainers like to do is to challenge the definitions, challenge the status quo sometimes. And I actually want to challenge this definition because I think they've missed one person out. You probably know who that person is. It's you. Yes. You see, I found that the relationships that we have with others often stem from the relationship we have within ourselves. What we feel inwardly has a sneaky habit of displaying itself externally in terms of our body language, our words, our meanings. And this is what people judge us on, rightly or wrongly. So let's have a look at this just a little bit closer. What relationship do you have with your body, with your past, your present, your future? I know this might seem a little bit heavy with this barrage of questions, so here's another one. When was the last time you reviewed any of these things? How do you speak to yourself? What's your internal dialogue saying? Do they relate to one another? Are you on the same page? Are you well acquainted? Do you have a good relationship with yourself? Or are you rather displaying a sort of an avatar of yourself when faced with certain situations? Oh, by the way, this isn't always a bad thing. Sometimes we need to ask, okay, what would my avatar do? Another question I'm going to ask you is the physical and mental relationship you have with yourself aligned? Do they and do you love one another? Do they communicate well with one another? You see, If there's a breakdown in communication, if one doesn't love the other, then this causes conflict, stress, anxiety, and this will have a potential negative effect on the external relationships you have in your life now and your life to come. When you feel like you're not good enough for the external relationships or not worthy of that self-love, this is part of the condition that we now know as imposter syndrome. And I'm not an expert on this topic at all, so I think I'll probably leave that for others to do a deeper dive into. But having a good relationship with the types of food that you consume, the drinks that you drink, the social activities you get up to for that instant gratification or relief, some of these things can lead to very unhealthy relationships, both inwardly as well as outwardly. So think about what you put into your body. Think about how you exercise your body as well as your mind. After all, every day is a learning day. Eat less, move more. These are common phrases, but they only work if you're eating the right food and drinking the right drink, and it's the right quantity, it's the right frequency, and any sort of physical movement and exercise you do, well, that's conducive to being strong, both physically as well as mentally. Go and get yourself checked out. Have the occasional service or MOT, particularly if your body is giving you clues. Don't ignore them. The same as you shouldn't ignore the warning signs that you may get during the relationship building phase. Because if you ignore those warning signs, it'll only fester, it'll only get worse. Now, I'm going to be totally honest with you here. I've been having a few tests. I haven't been on top form recently. I've been having some blood tests. Had an ECG a couple of weeks ago. Apparently, I do have a heart, which is a good thing. Tonight, I've got a CT scan on my head. That's my anniversary gift to my wife. Followed, of course, by a Nando's. Let's just hope that they do find that brain okay. And as it turns out, both the head and the heart are also crucial when it comes to making decisions about relationships, personal as well as professional. Do you lead with your head or do you lead with your heart? Sometimes in business, we have to remove the heart. We have to remove the emotion. We look at the logic. We look at the business sense. Is it worth your time? But occasionally, we need to change that tack in order to win the hearts. Now, you may be thinking that if you think that way, it could win the hearts and minds and build that relationships, you see? I put this stuff together. It's brilliant, isn't it? See, you win the hearts and minds. You have to win the hearts and minds, I think, if you want decent relationships. So anyway, let's get back to something else I mentioned. Past, present, and future. What relationships do you have with your past, your present, and your future? Some people allow their past to drag them down. They can't or they won't let go of this, and this has an impact on them to be able to forge and create new relationships. But on the other hand, if you use those past mistakes and you learn from those, then you can make sure that those same mistakes don't happen again. I suppose my first proper job in recruitment was at Blue Arrow, and I took over a desk from another consultant, and therefore when I was doing my BD, I saw his previous client notes. And as I was going through his notes, I saw one particular note that he'd written about this particular woman, and it was just 2 words. It just says, frosty knickers. And I thought, oh no. Now, because of what he'd written and the relationship that he either did or didn't have with this woman, that had an impact on me. I didn't want to call this woman, particularly if she needed defrosting. Anyway, I plucked up the courage, I called her, and the outcome? She was as nice as pie. It turns out she just didn't like Julian, the previous guy. So your past sometimes can hold you back, but the past can sometimes propel you as well. And what about your present relationship? Are you present? Are you there for yourself, and are you there for the other people? Are you there present, and are you paying attention? And that's why a lot of trainers, we ban mobile phones from training sessions, because if you're checking your phone, if you're texting, then you're not with us. You're not 100% there. And don't get me onto music events. Those people that have their mobile phones out, be there. Savor the moment. Why? Because you might not get a second chance. It might not happen again. And then there's the future. What relationship do you have with your future? Now, it might seem like a bit of a strange question, but have you ever asked yourself the question, well, what do I want my relationship to be like with me in the coming days, the coming weeks, the coming months, the coming years? Think about what Stephen Covey said. Start with the end in mind. Because when you visualize what you want these future relationships to look like, then you can start about the hard work of making them happen. And all of these relationships need dialogue. It needs actual communication, because even when you're not communicating, you're communicating. And I think if you have a good, honest, timely flow of communication between your physical and mental self, you come across as strong, motivated, determined, on point, driven, focused, and many other things that will only put you in good stead for creating positive, worthwhile, and fruitful and long-lasting external relationships. No scratch coming up. Sorry about that. We need these relationships in recruitment. We need relationships with our clients, with our candidates, our suppliers. Why? Well, for a whole bunch of R words, that's why. And I'll put them on the screen for you. Yes, we want repeat business. We want repeat users. Yes, we want regular business. Yes, we want people to recommend us and refer us. Yes, of course, we want the rewards associated with this job, but we also want to be able to command respect, but we also have to respect who we're working with. I want to be known as reliable, refreshing. I want some recognition, but I also want people to know us and know you for your reputation. And I want them to be responsive. How many times have you had an irresponsive client or candidate? But I also, at this point, just want to reference, I'm not sure how to pronounce his name. First name I know, Michael, but it's Michael Moonsingi, or he was on one of Angela's talks a little while ago. And he mentioned two things that I think are relevant right now when it comes to relationships and how unique our job is. Because he said two things. We sell something that we don't own. We don't own the candidate, we don't own the job opportunity, but we're out there promoting it and selling it and trying to build these relationships. The second point is we work for someone that we're not actually employed by. We're not actually on the monthly payroll. So it's really interesting when you look at relationships like that and you take it. Yes, Angela said Michael was fantastic. He was, the Ask the Coach session. I actually connected with him. So we've actually forged a first degree relationship now. But all relationships can be hindered. They can be hindered by external factors. Sometimes the environment that you find yourself in. People talk about toxic work cultures. They talk about it being hostile. They talk about it being micromanaged. Or the opposite of that. Yeah, it's a great environment. It's collaborative. It's fun. We're forward thinking. We encourage learning. We're empowering people. We're inclusive. And don't forget, we've got a ping pong table as well. And this is something that I want you to consider when your work environment is at home, or you're in a serviced office, or on site somewhere. You see, because you have to be strong, you have to be resilient, you have to be focused, you have to be organized when working from home, and have a good relationship with what's in the kitchen larder or in the fridge. Don't visit it too often. But also, when you are working out there alone or working from home, who's there to give you that metaphorical arm around the shoulder, particularly when you've just had some bad news or a call didn't go well? People, when they're alone like that, can sometimes feel more alone, particularly if they're not supported. So also be there to build people up and congratulations when they just have a win. And that's why it's always nice to actually get comments on these types of webinars. So the environment that we're in, the environment that you help to create, has an impact on the relationships that you cultivate. And yes, I did just use the word cultivate. Why? Because it's a seamless link into the next topic that I want to talk to you about. Because I saw a post recently and it was talking to us about think like a farmer. And I thought, what are they talking about? Think like a farmer. Think like a farmer in business. Well, on screen now are the 10 points. The 10 points that it said about thinking like a farmer. Number one, decide what you want to grow. Number two, find the right piece of land in the right geography. 3, choose the right plants for the soil and prepare the groundwork. 4, plant the seeds, obviously. 5, nurture, feed what you planted, water it, fertilize it. Number 6, I love this one, don't shout at the crops. You can talk to your plants at home, but don't shout at the crops. Number 7, don't blame them for not growing fast enough. Number 8, don't uproot them before they've had a chance to fully grow. Number 9, get rid of the weeds. Number 10, remember, you'll have good seasons and you'll have bad seasons. You can't control the weather, but you can prepare for it. Now, the chances are many of you on this right now are already making your own links. So I'm just going to keep this slide on screen right now, but I'm going to adapt the descriptions for each of them and make it more recruitment related. First one then, decide on your market. What's going to be your specialism? What's going to be your geography? What's going to be your niche? Number 2, now go out there and research that geography. Look at the landscape. Begin your market mapping and select the most fertile grounds that you can find, those both clients and candidates. Select the types of clients and candidates you want to work with and consider what approaches are going to be best. Prepare your openers. In other words, do your groundwork. Make the approaches to then start growing those relationships. Plant those seeds of what you're going to be able to do for them. What solutions are you going to be able to offer? What pain points are you going to be able to take away? Number 5, well, yeah, keep in touch. Keep an eye on them. Feed them knowledge. Give them those sort of market insights that you're probably all producing. Encourage them. Influence that relationship. And don't blame them. Don't blame them if they're not hiring. They might not genuinely be hiring. And don't tell the candidate, yeah, but you are unhappy, when they might be genuinely happy where they are. And don't have a go at them if it doesn't suit your agenda. Don't hurry them. Number 7, don't hurry them. Don't come across as too pushy when it comes to building these relationships, because just because it's not helping you to hit your targets. Number 8, don't take advantage of them, or don't try and, if you like, reap the rewards too early. Don't, if you like, take too much from that relationship. You have to wait until they're good and ready. Number 9, keep your eye out for any disruptors, other influencers who may ruin your crop, or in this case, ruin your relationship. Perhaps you've got a direct competitor, talent acquisition, in-house recruiting teams, perhaps even a colleague. But make sure the conditions are still good to keep that relationship alive. Review it, what's working and what isn't working. And remember that sometimes it happens. The market changes. We can only control the controllables. If the relationships fail, try again. And if genuinely it isn't to be, move on, plant something else. And in the case of lapsed clients, they now become either a hunting ground and certainly not a farm. All of this takes communication. So what is the best way of forging relationships? What's the best method of communication? Is it WhatsApp? Is it emails? Emails, text messages, Zoom, team meetings, webinars, phone calls, or face-to-face? Now, the chances are all of these methods of communication will have an impact on the relationship, depending on what stage of the relationship you're at. But I'd like to think that you know where I'm going with this. I think personally the best relationships are forged when you meet someone face to face. There you go. I've said it. I'll put it out there. Now, you can put in the comments if you like whether you agree or you disagree. The best relationships are forged when you've actually met someone face to face. And I'm talking proper skin time, not like this. Charlotte agrees. Excellent. That's 2 of us on this webinar that do. Can you build relationships over the phone? Yes, of course you can. There's always going to be, particularly when there's geography. Thank you, Daniela. She agrees too. But can we build relationship just as effectively electronically? For me personally, the jury's out on that one. After all, sometimes the electronic communication isn't even human. It's ChatGPT or AI. That is definitely another topic. It does remind me, though, you might not know this, but my first job when I left school, Angela knows this. When I left school on my 16th birthday, academia wasn't for me. AI had a completely different meaning because I worked on a dairy farm. I won't explain in detail what happens when the AI man came around, or I won't explain to you the sort of relationships that I had with 180 Frisian milking herd. But AI back then, and still does mean in the farming world, artificial insemination. AI has a different meaning right now, but I call it, AI for me is Alan's initiative, Alan's input. Alan's intelligent, Alan's involvement. So there you go. I don't know what it actually stands for. No, I do. So look, relationships. Relationships are good for us personally as well as in our business, but they don't happen overnight. They need space, they need nurturing, they need feeding, they need constant care and attention. And one way that Angela and I, for many years, have been explaining relationships and how they build is by using the relationship staircase. So, just in case you didn't know what a staircase looked like, there's one on screen right now. Um, all relationships start off on the initial contact phase. Now, you'll notice that with that contact phase, this is when the buyer doesn't trust you. The buyer doesn't know you. Therefore, the buyer has the power. But this is the real getting to know you stage. But you have to drive the conversation. You've got to be persuasive to win attention. You've got to know and prove your worth and your value. The buyer, potential buyer, they need solid facts and evidence that you can actually do what you say you can do. If they buy into that, they might give you some form of acceptance. Now, the acceptance stage is slightly different because now they're starting to accept you. They might even give you a job to work. They might send you a CV and say, look, yes, you can market me out if you like. You can put me forward for that role. So they start to accept you, and the conversation is more, if you like, two-way. They start to accept you in your role as a recruiter. But we still haven't got their trust yet. Now, trust is when a true partnership starts to develop. They accept you, but they also accept your level of service. There's more openness and guidance welcomed. There's more constant attention. You're both contacting one another now. But trust is also demonstrated when the buyer, the client or the candidate, they start to ask you questions. It's when they say, so what do you think we should be paying? What do you think I should be doing right now? What's the market doing? What they're demonstrating there is they trust you, they trust your judgment, they trust your knowledge of the marketplace. And all of that is really going to strengthen the relationship and hopefully give you the commitment that you need. Commitment is the next step. It's regular interaction. You're both working at the relationship. Why? Because you both value the relationship. However, this is the dodgy step because it becomes a little bit habitual, habit formation. Potentially the relationship might become a little bit less stimulating. Why? Why would it become less stimulating? Because when we get to that level of the staircase, we become a little bit complacent. We stop doing all the things that got us there in the first place, that sort of champagne period, the excitement, the thrill of the chase, and we think, oh, well, I've got them now. I've got them on a PSL. Yeah, they said they work exclusively with me, and then that's it. So this is where you need to really review your relationships. What's working, what isn't working? What else can I do to strengthen that? Because ideally what we want to get to is loyalty and advocacy, the top two steps. When someone's loyal, yeah, they'll retain you. They'll provide exclusivity. They'll use you on a regular basis. They'll refer you. Fantastic. But also, I want to get to advocacy, because with advocacy, you've got clients, you've got candidates out there selling you internally, externally, providing you with testimonials, and you don't even need to ask for it. They will do it without you asking because you've worked your way through. And I'm sure there is a more detailed session on the relationship staircase in the gym. Donovan, you just mentioned, yeah, the relationship staircase works for both clients, candidates, and your own personal life. So if anyone needs any personal relationship advice, it's on that staircase right there. But look, you can't rush. You can't rush a relationship. You might need to hurry up a little bit if you're on a webinar, though, particularly if you're being pushed for time. So I suppose I better start talking about objections, which is the sort of the second part of the session today. But first of all, I want to talk about, but why do they happen? You see, it might have been you. You might have asked for the objection. It might have been something that you said or didn't say. It might have been something that you did or didn't do. You see, sometimes when people object, maybe they are genuinely unhappy with the products, the services that you've just pitched to them. Maybe they're just thinking out loud. Maybe they're heavily influenced by previous experiences. Maybe they just got prejudices and they make assumptions and they've got misconceptions about you and recruitment. Maybe they're just trying to get you off the phone. Maybe you made assumptions, or maybe you sold too early. We need to consider objections as not necessarily no's. It might be that this is a buying signal, a request for more information. Perhaps they're not ready to make an informed decision. Why? Because they don't have all the information that they need. They need additional stuff so they can mull it over and make the right decision. All of us on this webinar in live, we use no's. We use no's as part of our buying decisions. You know, I could walk into a coffee shop. I say no to oat milk, almond milk, the sugary syrups. I say no to the special offer beans that they've got on display. I say no to the mocha, choca, frappuccino, latte. I just want a coffee. That's it. So no's are actually important. I'd be more worried if everyone just said yes to us. That would make it very competitive and your prices would be screwed as well. So don't create the objection yourself. In fact, you can sometimes predict or preempt objections, predictive objection handling, particularly if you've done some research beforehand. If you know something about the clients beforehand, use that as part of your opener. For example, if I'm calling a client and it's likely that they're going to have a PSL, I'll use that as my opener. You know, so look, I suspect that a company of your size has got established suppliers in place for very good reason. But the reason for my call today is, now it's very difficult for them to say, oh, but we've got a PSL, because you've already told them that. You've already told them, I know you've got suppliers. So it's very difficult for them to use that against you because you've already given it to them. By the way, there's no magic formula when it comes to objection handling. If someone wants to be a complete arse, you can't change that. You know, if they slam down the phone, if they tell you to do one, that's fine. Why is it fine? Because they can now become a hunting ground. So next slide. I really went to town on this, didn't I? Look at that. Look at that wonderful grey background. This is the objection handling structure. I'm sure some of you have been trained on objection handling before. You might have different structures, but ultimately it is those four things. You listen and acknowledge. You question the hell out of the objection. You sell then to overcome the objection, and then you close it off to agree some sort of action. Do I need to tell you how to listen? I'm sure I don't. But I do want to give you a few clues. Listen to the words and how they say those words. Listen to what's not being said. When somebody says, I'm happy where I am, they're not telling you why they're happy. They're not telling you what would make them happier. If a client says, we don't use agencies, you don't know why. You don't know what they do use instead of agencies. So listen for what's not being said and then challenge it. Listen and don't interrupt. Leave a pause, just in case they want to stick another one in. And then to give yourself some time to think, acknowledge it. I hear what you're saying. I understand where you're coming from. I appreciate that's your situation. And this is where we can pull out a bag, something that isn't new. Feel, felt, found. This is a great way to demonstrate empathy, to let somebody know that they're not alone, but other people have come outside and there was a solution there. I completely understand how you feel. In fact, other people felt the same way, but this is what they found. To do the listening, do the feel, felt, found, and then go on to the second stage. Question it to fully understand the objection. Use all of the questioning techniques that you have available to you. You're open, you're closed, you're probing, your spin, your hypotheticals. Because only then, once you've understood the real objection, can you then sell or present back a solution, whether you're pitching them a candidate or whether you're giving them your features, advantages, and benefits of your service. And then when you've done the pitch, close it off. Get some sort of agreement, get some sort of commitment. Has that now met with your approval? Are you now happy to move forward on this? And there is something that hopefully I could do this. It says share something. I just want to share something with you. Share screen, window. I don't know what you can see right now, but can you see this? It says response handling tools on my website. And again, out of the need from clients, I actually put together something that was online, because Angela and we've been training objections for years and years and years, and people end up with a handout pack where all the objections are in there, or how to handle the objections are in there, or they're on a Rolodex or some sort of photo album or something. Somebody asked me if we could do something that was automated. Well, yeah, and I think I'm the only person that has done this. So I produced this set of response handling tools. Obviously, you have to log in. But I've got 4 things on there: dealing with gatekeeper responses, because they can object; handling client objections, dealing with specific retainer objections, and managing candidate responses, and how to get more from the calls as well. I'll give you an example of, well, let's say dealing with retainer specific objections. This is the format that you would see. Why should I use you as a sole agent? And if you click on that, it will give you a bunch of responses. Or we've used search before, it didn't work. Let's see what contingency brings. It takes too long. Can you guarantee? It's too expensive. Why should I pay up front? So all of these objections, and the same with the business development, the same with candidates. So I'm going to stop sharing, and hopefully you're going to come back and see me on the screen. I'm not sure if that's actually working. There we go. I think I'm back. So look, objection handling. I think you've got to practice with it. I actually became pretty good at objection handling, not because I had my tool, because I didn't back then, but because my first boss was an absolute bugger with this. Wherever I was, I could be sat on the toilet, I could be in the kitchen, I could be at a bus stop, I could be at home, and he would call me, he'd tap me on the shoulder, he'd knock on the door, and he'd say, "We've got a PSL. We don't use agencies. You're too expensive." So wherever I was, whether I was sitting up, sitting down, standing up, making a coffee, at a bus stop, at home watching Midsummer Murders on a Sunday evening, my boss would be there wanting to role play. But he did it for a very good reason. The reason was, when I was doing the BD, I didn't know when the objection was going to happen. But when it did happen, I dealt with it. I dealt with it several different ways so I could come back very confidently. So I guess I have just one question for you, and that is, have you got any questions? Because I know I've been blabbing on probably for way too long. I hope that you've got some takeaways from this. If you've got some questions, you can ping them through the gym if you're not going to do anything live on this session. But I hope you've enjoyed it. I hope you've got some takeaways. My name is Alan Clark. I know I should have done the introduction at the start, but I am Mr. Recruiter Fit, as represented by this. But I do collaborate, obviously, with Angela and the recruiting gym very occasionally. So thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. I hope you've enjoyed it. And see you next time around. You'll see me on LinkedIn. I'm always doing stuff on there. Thanks, Donovan. Take care, everybody.